In today's video, we will be doing a deep dive into the Syndicate trait. What are the units? What are their abilities? Do they have any CC? How do you itemize position and more? But before we do that, just a friendly reminder that Project Mentor, the #1 personal training program for TFT, is available and still open for signups. We are closing on March 26th though, so it's March 23rd at like 9 p.m. at night. It's very late, so there's really only 2 days left to sign up. But if you want to partake in the #1 personal training program, I highly recommend checking it out. There is a short on my YouTube channel that explains what Project Mentor is in 50 seconds or less. If you want to go check that out, I highly encourage you to check out the program. It's easily the best program across anything that anybody in the TFT scene is offering. I can guarantee that from the bottom of my heart. Also, in 4 hours, 4 fucking hours, I've spent, by the way, 3 all-nighters in the past like 4 days working on this shit, just non-stop, making sure everyone's cleared and everything. Project PvE is starting in 4 hours. You will see a lot of top players and streamers partaking in this program, especially if you are from APAC or EUS. You'll probably notice a lot of players that you are very familiar with who will be streaming in this event. You'll know who they are, by the way, because you'll know exactly if they are in Project PvE because of the tracker. Do you guys see that shit up there? At the top left, we just implemented this tracker like this set, and we spent so much time on this shit. By the way, you can see all of the fantastic players in this program as well who are participating in the project. If you go over to the player list, which I will link, by the way, in the description if you want to go check it out. But we have players like Flancy from China. We have players like Weibo Gaming Easy from China. We have players like we have Tidal, the like arguably top 2 if not the best player in the whole fucking world. Michael, who's partaking as well, who was like top 10 at Worlds. Piva from Vietnam. We have YBY1 from Vietnam. We have Taro, who has been in final lobby multiple times, I believe. At least once, I know that. At Worlds as well. Like, we have like we have quite literally like the best players, like some of the best players of APAC participating in this, and on top of that, some of the best players of EU West and some from North America as well. So you'll notice players like Rainplosions in this. You'll notice players like Spethem's in here actually, which is pretty cool. You'll also notice like I think Marcel P is in here as well. Super dope guy, super good player. So again, Jungle Book's in here as well. If you are very in the competitive scene, you'll know who that is. But again, incredible good players. And if you want to go check out the playlist, again, it's public. Anybody can look into the playlist and you can go check it out and see if your favorite streamer is playing in the project. But with that being said, let's get on to today's video, the Syndicate tree. So let's talk about the trait first. Let's do a little trait overview. So if you don't know already, the Syndicate trait, when it's active, every single Syndicate unit gains HP and damage amplification. But depending on how far you go up the vertical, you can also unlock Kingpin hats. They're like these little purple hats, which uniquely upgrade Syndicate champion abilities. These abilities are unique to each and every one. The Kingpin bonus is different for each and every one. So let's go over what each of them are. And let's talk about the units as well. So first off, Shaco. Shaco is a headache. I don't know if you guys already know this, but this guy is a nightmare. I'm a little worried about the balancing on this guy, but we'll see. The tooltip, actually, you'll notice is actually incorrect on tactics.tools here, but we'll talk a little bit. Basically, he just gains AD that stacks up throughout the entire course of the game. As he gets more and more kills. So he stacks from the beginning all the way to the very end. So an infinitely AD scaling champion throughout the course of the game. His active basically just does bonus physical damage to his current target. But the thing that's really a nightmare about him is his Kingpin bonus, which here says it teleports behind the lowest enemy within 4 hexes, which has been changed since the time of recording this video to 3 hexes. And they deal a little bit more bonus damage. So that's the part of the trait that's really frustrating to play around, because I know a lot of players, even top players, are saying this guy is incredibly frustrating to play against, and it is not very evident or clear how you are supposed to really position or really play around it. It can be very unpredictable, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Twisted Fate is the 2 cost of the Syndicate tree. Basically, his passive, he gains 2 AP per auto attack. So you'll see a bunch of builds such as double Ginsu's Gunblade, or you'll see stuff like Shojin Archangels and some other stuff. We'll talk about why that is, but you'll see because he's a rapid fire, he likes to auto a ton, but he likes casting a lot as well, and his passive, or his active rather, excuse me. He's like League of Legends, basically just throws a card at the current target and it deals X amount of damage. The Kingpin bonus is interesting though. It basically shuffles between the blue, the red, or the yellow card, and he will choose one. Blue will basically do, I believe it does a little bit of true damage, and then let me just read that, make sure that's correct. Yep, blue does extra true damage, or not extra true damage, excuse me. It converts his damage, 50% of it, into true damage. The red one will do an AoE, like little damage, like circle of damage around the target. And then the yellow one will drop money, although the yellow one is very rare. Typically speaking, it is not very common. You will see it. That was redundant, excuse me. But it's very unlikely you'll find the gold card. I actually haven't seen the gold card, so I'm almost a little skeptical if it exists, but that is TF in a nutshell. That is, again, with the Kingpin bonus. Darius as well, as you can tell, another 2 cost in the vertical tree. Basically, he's kind of a reprint from last set. He swings in a circle, heals for damage, so it's the same thing as his Q. And he also sunders enemies, so he actually has some built-in sunder, which is really interesting as well. His Kingpin bonus basically increases the hex range of his swing, so going from 1 hex up to 2 hexes. And then it also, I believe, the damage is reduced. Yeah, the damage is reduced the further away the target is, so it's a little interesting. It's kind of like the opposite of what you'd expect out of League of Legends if you played it before, where the outside of his Q does the most damage, or the outside of his swing rather. But now this is like kind of inverted. If they're closer, you'll do more damage. So a little odd, but it is what it is. Next one, Braum, the 3-cost Vanguard of the vertical. Basically, he just gains a big shield and then chills enemies. So he has a slow built into his kit. His Kingpin bonus, he just gets more stats. So he just gets more armor MR. And then he has like a little bit of bonus damage on his auto, which is kind of odd. I'm not really sure like why they included that, but I mean, why not? Just include shit to include shit, I guess. Miss Fortune, the 4-cost of the vertical trait. She's like the premier carry. She's 80 this set, by the way. So in case you've been building her AP because of previous sets, like in set 8 where she was AP, now she's 80. But she has the exact same ability from set 8, which is basically she just shoots like this big wave of bullets, like her ultimate in League of Legends. But basically, enemies struck will take less damage from like other bullets, I believe. But it's just basically she goes pew pew pew, big wave of damage. So very, very, very straightforward. Her Kingpin bonus just makes the wave like I think more concentrated. I don't think the duration of it is longer. I think she just fires more bullets. So there you go. Very straightforward kit and very straightforward vertical, to be completely honest. But because of this, there isn't a lot of times you're playing like vertical Syndicate. It's usually more of like a tempo thing if you're playing like 5 Syndicate. We'll talk about the exceptions as well, but let's go over the compositions, where you'll notice that most of the time, if you're playing around a Syndicate champion, it's not typically with the traits active. It's usually just 3 because you want that Kingpin bonus. So shaco reroll, the nightmare of most players, especially in low elo, I'm going to assume. This guy sucks to play into. Basically, shaco reroll is sort of wants to assassinate and kill stuff and jumps around and can be very irritating to play against. He is basically built in the Slayer vertical. The reason being is that 6 Slayer actually provides a fuck ton of AD damage. I'm not sure how these numbers will exactly look when the set goes onto live, but right now, as of the time of recording, it's 70 AD with 20% Omnivamp. Again, Tactics Tools has not updated everything. I don't think they updated daily, so it could be a little different by the time you watch this. So don't take the numbers too much to heart. Just know that it's a lot of AD and a lot of Omnivamp when you go up higher up the Slayer tree. That's all you gotta know. But very simply put, you just re-roll for shaco. It's a 1-cost re-roll. You could roll for Mundo as well if you truly wanted to. I don't see there being too much merit to finding Mundo 3. I think it's just one of those things that, like, if you get it, you're happy to have it, but it just helps you thin out the pool a little bit, so it's easier to hit the shaco. But I think that change is pretty negligible. But if it's gonna be on your board anyways, you might as well 3-star it. So it's you know, it's fine, not amazing, it's fine. Just it is what it is. Zed is usually going to be your secondary carry in this line as well. Zed is really interesting, and we'll talk more about him in the Cypher video. He is a unit that feels like it should be a good splash unit. He's actually the only AD melee unit, by the way. Fun fact in the set. Kind of an odd decision, but he just feels very lackluster. He kind of feels like you kind of want to cash out the Cypher trait, but trying to play like a Cypher cash out like shaco variation doesn't really exist. The only way I could see that even being remotely possible is if 6 Slayer provides very little and 4 Slayer is sort of like that big break point. Maybe we'll see one patch down the line that has like a 3 Cypher variation, but as of right now, at the time of recording, it's just 6 Slayer. There's just too much value going higher and higher up the vertical. And again, Zed, like, he's also an assassin, by the way. The way his targeting is really interesting. Basically, he throws a shuriken at the first unmarked target that's within 4 hexes, and then that he basically casts and then teleports to them, and then summons a shadow on every other marked enemy and then does some damage. So Also very assassin-esque, and actually his kit works very, very well with shaco. You want these guys on opposite sides, shaco being on the same side as your opponent's carry, and Zed being on the opposite side because of the way that he kind of goes to like the furthest unit away. But let's talk a little bit about positioning shaco, because I think that's really important. And obviously I gotta credit my sources. I can't take all the credit on here. Broseph, very fantastic player, challenger player, very well known in the NA scene, has posted this very long Twitter thread. I will link it in the description if you want to go check it out. But he basically talks about like all of the assassin positioning, and he made this at a very good time because he actually made this guide right when shaco's ability changed from 4 to 3 hexes. So he has a very interesting take on the way that you position shaco, and I'll try to summarize it, but I would highly recommend that you check out his thread just so you understand the full scope of not only shaco but positioning all of the slayers in the tree. Shaco positioning is basically you want him to be adjacent to one of your melee carries so that he walks up into the hex here, basically the first hex into your opponent's board, because that puts him within 3 hex range of your opponent's carry. That's also why you want it on the same side. If your opponent's tank is like this will not work because shaco will just stay in place, teleport like kind of like this in kind of an odd fashion. And it won't really work out in terms of assassinating. So you really want to make sure that he kind of like moves up into that first hex, and that this tank here is blocking his ability to sort of walk this way, and he's forced to walk forward. The same thing is on the opposite side. If you put shaco on the left side here, again, the tank, if the tank is here, you're fucked. You can't do anything. But if it's here and you put a tank here, then shaco's forced to walk forward on the Leona. It will cast, and if your opponent's on the same side, then it will just cast immediately onto here, assuming that is the lowest HP target. So is it lowest HP target, I believe? Yeah, I believe that's how his targeting works. So, yes, lowest health enemy. So, that is how his ability works. So, again, you want to make sure that if you are positioning like this, that you take this into account and take into account the opponent's front line and how that situation is looking. Again, if your opponent is privy and aware, they will block you off here. So, the best thing you can do is just make sure that shaco is still on the same side, and hopefully he can scam something. But in this scenario, counter positioning is very, very favored for the player who is being assassinated, right? So in this case, this misfortune player would have the upper hand if they are aware of how to position against shaco. So again, Leona could be here, forces shaco to have a much more difficult time trying to access the backline, and on the opposite side as well is the same thing. If your opponent puts their frontline tank 1 hex over, so mirror, this would be on A2. So A2 or A7 are the hexes you want to put your frontline on if you're playing against shaco. Basically, this makes it a lot harder again for the shaco to move because it cannot move forward. I'm sure like if you position it like this, you also want to probably have a unit in here just to really ensure that shaco doesn't walk in. If you really wanted to, there's some counter positioning that exists against this, where you position shaco like this because your opponent has spread out the tanks like this in some odd fashion, and then you could have the shaco move forward out of Leona, and then now it's back in that 3 hex range. So that exists as well. It's a lot to think about, but just know that if you are playing into shaco, you have the upper hand. It's up to you as a player to position against it, which is really nice. I think that's nice that there is some counterplay that definitely does exist based on positioning. Again, I would highly recommend checking out Broseph. He does a lot of really good stuff on Twitter, especially like positioning focused content, which is not stuff that's talked about enough, I think, in educational content. So really informative stuff. Itemization wise, it's just GA, Hodge, IE. I think it's fairly obvious. He just wants to execute, deal a lot of damage. He needs a little bit of that sustainability, which is nice from Hodge, and GA in case he gets autofocused too fast and can't actually cast and get his stuff going. So very straightforward. Next one as well, let's talk about it. Syndicate, Twisted Fate, Darius, reroll. It's fine. I'm not like the biggest fan. You'll also notice the Twisted Fate itemization, I think, is going to be the most interesting topic to talk about. I think the most talked about itemization build right now is double Ginsu's Gunblade. I am still not a full believer, to be completely honest. I know what the stats are saying. I know what people are saying as well. I'm not the biggest fan of it. And the reason I say that is because I think the 2 AP per auto is like, it feels it feels too negligible to me. That you would justify a double Ginsu's Gunblade build like this, but I can see it, so I'm not going to deny it, the credibility of it. And I know the stats actually, I think right now currently support this, but I think this Shojin JG Gunblade build is like a very, if it is second, it's a very close second. Like, I really think that people are overrating, like, this double Ginsu necessity. I really do think that, like, you can just itemize TF as, like, a typical, like, Shojin JG guard breaker carry, and, like, you will have a lot of success. I also think that because of the way that the stacking is, it feels a bit slow. Like, one Archangel proc, just so we have some context, one Archangel proc after 5 seconds will give 30 AP, right? is TF gonna auto 15 times within 5 seconds, right? He will later down the line, don't get me wrong, but leading, like, at the beginning of the fight, it's very, very slow. So yes, he does ramp, and yes, he does want to ramp up and gain more AP, yada yada yada, but like I could see like a case for Archangels, and you'll see in his actual item builds, like Archangels pops up fairly commonly. I think his itemization is way more flexible than people are sort of thinking right now, and you know, I think at the end of the day, you could do both. Double Ginsu is probably like slightly better, but like it really is a close second. It's like a very, very close second. You can definitely find a lot of success itemizing slightly less optimal, which I know is like nails to a chalkboard for TFT players, but it is fine. It is more than fine. So anyways, this is sort of the level 6 board you're kind of playing around. It's like this like Syndicate, like Bruiser-esque board. This is sort of going to be your level 6 for a while. You can roll for the Darius 3. You can roll, I wouldn't get Ross 3, and we'll talk about why in just a second because of the way that this line sort of pivots. But eventually, you can just do something like this. You could even just like, if you have double Ginsus, you could actually probably just drop Rapid Fire, to be completely honest, I think. I'm not the biggest fan, but like you could play like a 4 Bruiser version instead, and I think that fits. But you could go for the Darius 3 as well. Again, not necessary. I think this Darius 3 unit has felt a bit lackluster to me, and I don't like itemizing this Darius 3, knowing that you are probably not going to play 5 Syndicate, because, well, let's talk about the direction of this board, but eventually you want to go into 6 Bruiser. And when you're playing 6 Bruiser, you end up playing around the Misfortune instead. So, again, I'm not the biggest fan of these. If you really want to, you can throw these onto Kabuko. But I'm not the biggest fan of this. Realistically speaking, you want 3 tank items on somebody. It's probably going to be your Gragas 3, all things considered. If you happen to find it, put items on him. Otherwise, you can put on Kabuko. You can put it on Cho'Gath 2. You have a lot of options here. You can even put on Mordekaiser 3. Like, there's a lot of options here, really. Mordekaiser 3, by the way, unit quality-wise, is probably better. Has a built-in stun, AoE stun, 2 hex range. Very great. So, that seems fine as well. And then Misfortune is probably going to be the secondary carry. But I think Zeri works here too. Like, if you're playing Anger Issues, I actually could see this being like an Anger Issues comp. Because Zeri likes Skinsus. TF likes Skinsus. And that just sounds solid to me. I'm just saying. But you can also itemize Misfortune as well. And Misfortune has some kind of interesting itemization choices. We'll talk about it a little bit. But this is the general build for 6 Bruiser TF reroll. Very straightforward. Next one, Misfortune. So, this is a Misfortune board that I don't think is the most common. I'm going to talk about the second common first and then the most common. This variation includes 3 Anima Squad and Ziggs as sort of like a fallback strategist in case you find that early Kabuko. The reason why I think this line is important to know, or this variation is important to know, is because I don't think it's as good as the 4 Vanguard variation, which I think is going to be the most common meta. But this is a really nice variation to play around when you need to flex on stage 4, because a lot of the times on your 4-2 roll down, unless you're super lucky, you're not going to find that Aurora 1 every single time, right? It's very, I would say it's super common, but it's common enough that you might find your Ziggs 2 on your roll down instead of that Aurora 1. That you could itemize Ziggs 2, and that could help you carry throughout stage 4. And if you really wanted to, you could pivot out of it once you find that Aurora 1. I don't know if that's the best choice of plan. It always depends on your spot. But this is a variation, I think, again, it's very nice to know. Because Ziggs is such a fantastic unit. And it's fine. Again, it's not the best variation, I would say, but it's very close. The reason, by the way, I want to know if you know this, but take a look at this board. And this is a very good critical thinking exercise. Take a look at this board, and then take a look at this 4 Vanguard board. This is probably going to be the most common meta, by the way. Do you know why this board is going to theoretically be better than this board? The 3 Anima variation, the 4 Vanguard variation. You can pause the video to think on it. I'll give you like a second as well to think on it, but I'm going to start talking about the answer here. The reason why this 4 Vanguard variation is supposedly a bit better is because this 3 Anima trait does fucking nothing. So it's like, oh, the Anima units get a little bit of armor MR. Sure, it does do that, but realistically speaking, 4 Vanguard is going to beef up your front line a lot more than just trying to play these traits because it looks nice, right? So 4 Vanguard will probably end up being like the main variation here, which is what I would expect. But they're close enough that, like, I think that if you find that early Kabuko, you should know that, like, oh, Kabuko, and on that roll down, like, you're holding Ziggs as well. So slight optimizations that are important to know when rolling down for like a Misfortune carry-esque board. But nonetheless, I still think that this is a sort of most common variation, second common variation, but you should know this one because it's very common you will miss Aurora. Misfortune items are going to be Shojin, i.e. Guard Breaker. You might be wondering, like, oh, it's Dynamo, though. So, like, Dynamo is like the Scholars. You get extra mana, and Dynamo units actually get double it. So, like, does she really need Shojin? Probably still does. She always feels good to have Shojin. It's never really bad. I think 4 Dynamo is when you start to get into that conversation of does she really still need it. But at least at the time of recording this, on Tactics.tools, it lists her mana pool as 150, which is very high. So, even with 4 Dynamo, I mean, you probably still do want Shojin. Also, just all of the itemization really does favor having her hold a Shojin plus damage items. I wonder if we can filter. I don't know how to use Meta TFT well enough to like filter the stats based on like if she has a Shojin but it's only like 2 Dynamo versus 4 Dynamo. Like, where's the difference there? That is something that we'll probably know once the set goes on to live, and then we can really like break down the stats and see like what is BIS Misfortune based on what conditions. But obviously, your main tank is going to be the Leona here, the 4-cost Vanguard Anima Squad unit, and Aurora is going to be your ideal AP carry here. Very straightforward. I think Aurora, if you don't find it, I think Elise 2 is going to be enough to get you by. You don't really, like, it's not ideal to play around the Elise here, but you're going to want to play Elise 2 in case you don't find that Aurora 1. I think Aurora 1 will probably be better, but Elise 2 is fine. So, there you go. Finally, I want to talk about this variation a little bit, this 3-cost variation. This is news to me, actually. I found out about this, like, maybe an hour before filming. So, shout out to Raptor for throwing this along my way, and I think he actually told Sub-Zero to play this line, which is pretty cool. It's like a 3 Divinicore, 3 Syndicate, Elise reroll, Braum reroll, 7 board. Really cool stuff. Spicy. You have 3 different units you can play around, the Braum, the Elise, and the Gragas to reroll. Braum is easily going to be your best carry when it comes to your tank. So you basically Syndicate cap the Braum, so he's like super buff, and then this Elise unit actually seems to do a lot of good work as a 3-star unit. I feel like the cap of this is going to be pretty high. It's very difficult to hit because you're kind of playing around Elise plus Misfortune. There's a lot of different stuff going on here, but it's a really, really cool variation. I think Elise also what's really cool is that currently at the time of recording, the stats support all sorts of flexible AP options as long as you have some mana gen plus damage items. I think blue buff JG Guardbreaker theoretically is going to be the #1 best in slot, but Shojin and Adaptive both seem to have very good stats. So like quite honestly, I think this is one of those things that like you could tempo around depending on your spot and potentially pivot into it later if you needed to. Like I have a Shojin, but I was gonna play standard, but now I'm hitting a lot of Elises. Like that's fine. Just play around the Elise 3. It's totally chill. Again, this Gragas 3 unit, I'm not the biggest fan of it. It's just like he does his W from League. That's all he does. He chugs, heals a bit, and that's it. He doesn't feel that tanky to me, to be completely honest. So I'm not the biggest fan. I think Sunfire is fine on this unit. You might notice Sunfire and Morello are on here. Eventually, you want to play the Aurora, and if you play Aurora, who is a Dynamo unit as well, she can hold the Morello here, and she is going to be your best holder. I think Morello Morgana is going to be fine for your early game, but if like realistically speaking, she doesn't spread it too well. She spreads it every time she casts, and she's only 40 mana, but it's not enough to spread it fast enough that I think it's substantial. So if you end up finding that Sunfire early, I would just slam it, throw it onto Gragas, and then just tempo with that. But I guess Morello is like the optimal option for your anti-heal, but it's not like amazing. Shiv is in here as well, but I would say you don't want to prioritize Shiv too early. The reason being is that it takes a tier, which is really unfortunate. And if you take a tier, you are 1 tier away from Elise blue buff and also a tier away from Misfortune Shojin. So this comp eats a lot of tiers. So that's why I'm not like the biggest fan of Shiv here. But again, it kind of follows the same philosophy of like, you don't really have anybody who can hold it better. Plus the fact that Elise actually has some built-in MR shred in her kit as well, in case you did not know that. She basically will like, it says it fires 4 lasers, but it fires at the current target and the 4 more split between the nearest 2 enemies. So it's like, it's kind of weirdly phrased. It's 4 lasers total, but it hits 3 different units. So that's how it does. And then basically it reduces by a flat amount for the rest of combat. So it's nice. And in the early game, you don't have to prioritize your shred too heavily. You will need it later, but for the time being, especially from like stage 2 to 4, maybe starting stage 4, like you don't need to prioritize it super heavily. So That's just something to keep in mind. Like, if you have only one tier, you should prioritize the blue buff over the shiv, unless you have no other ways of finding the shred. You know, again, it's case by case. And again, we're bringing up this comp because Miss Fortune is a syndicate unit. She is the best secondary carry in this line. This alone, if you can get the Miss Fortune at least 3, like, you are solid. You are chilling. There's some other variations of this as well. You could play like 5 syndicate on 8 by dropping. I believe you drop the. No, you don't drop the Rust. You could drop like Gragas too. You could drop like some other stuff as well. Like there's some possibilities as well. 5 syndicate sounds like really good tempo to get to 9. So that is something that you can consider. So yeah, but that's it. So that's basically going to be the end of this video. So thank you guys for watching till the very end. Oh, I'm so sorry. There's one last portion. The +1 syndicate. So this line by itself, you could play 7 syndicate if you want. It does look strong, but I think power level wise, if you remember 7 Black Rose from set 13, it's probably supposed to be balanced around a similar power level, considering it only requires 2 emblems and is a 7 cost chase trait. So it's good. Don't get me wrong. You should definitely play 7 if you get 7, but like don't expect to like immediately win out like 10 anima or like 10 exo attack and stuff like that. The spat, by the way, in case you don't know the components, pop quiz. Do you know that? I know what pop quiz. Like fuck you. Pop quiz. What creates a syndicate emblem? I'm going to stare awkwardly at the camera while I wait for you to try to figure it out. Also, you might have cheated because I just noticed that the item table has it. It is spat and cloak. All right, let's learn these spat items. Let's learn the pan items. It's very important. Pans, by the way, this set, in case you didn't know, they give a little bonus stats if you create those pan traits. We'll talk about that in another video though. But until then, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. And before we go, again, one last thing. Thank you. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to the channel as we are trying to surpass Sub-Zero Arc in subscribers this set. And again, final reminder, Project Mentor, you got 2 days left at the time of recording to sign up if you really want to improve at TFT like nothing before. The interview portion, by the way, is free. You can freely interview up to 3 mentors. And if you're like, I'm not sold, totally fine. 100% fine. That is totally okay. It's free though. You can interview these people for free. So you might as well just sign up to just interview for free. So anyways, that's basically gonna do it. I'm not gonna keep yapping about it anymore, but if you want to check it out, projectsbykai.com. Okay, that's it. Take care, guys, and happy collabing.